You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Cyberspace, the new frontier. These are the voyages of the podcast First Contact. Its mission? To explore every episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. To seek out new viewers and have new conversations. To boldly view what many have viewed before. Welcome to First Contact, the Star Trek The Next Generation intro cast. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This week we are looking at Angel 1, written by Patrick Barry and directed by Michael Rhodes. It first aired the week of January 25th, 1988. James, what happens in this episode? I don't remember because it melted my brain.
Well, on their way to another important mission that they'll never get to, the Enterprise discovers the wreckage of a freighter. Searching for survivors, they visit the nearest planet. Angel 1 is a matriarchy, and by reversing the attitudes of men and women, it highlights how ridiculous the lack of gender equality is in the 1980s, and we all learn something. Except it's about as subtle as throwing bricks shaped like the word feminism at someone's face and hoping they get the message. Riker has to dress pretty for the ruler of the planet, who insists on being called mistress. You know, like how male leaders are all called master and not like a dominatrix at all. Turns out the Odin survivors have started a men's lib campaign, as if they're in a Robert Llewellyn one-man show from the 80s. The revolutionaries are sentenced to death, but Riker makes a speech and fixes it all. Oh, and for some reason everyone left on the Enterprise catches a bad cold after Wesley throws a snowball off the holodeck.
So, where to begin with this? First impressions, Alex, as someone who is coming at this episode fresh in 2013, having never seen it when it was first aired in the 80s. You probably don't really understand the complex political themes at work here.
Well, it was just crap, wasn't it? It was just a steaming pile of putrid, rancid manure. An irredeemably featureless wart on the series so far. I can't express how much I hated it. But worst of all, it was just boring.
Boring, you say?
Yeah, it's all things that we've seen before done just as badly, with the offence in there but not turned up quite as much as it was on Code of Honour, as if that's some kind of thing that makes it a good episode. Well, at least it wasn't irredeemably racist.
Interesting you should mention racism. Do you know that this episode, as originally written, was supposed to be a commentary on apartheid, but using the genders as the metaphor there?
That would have been terrible. In an already terrible episode. Double terrible.
The thing is, it almost feels like they were trying to do something. They were trying to have this important message and just ended up being offensive.
The internal logic of it makes no sense whatsoever by the end of it. The entire argument falls down and folds in on itself. Again, making the point null and void. So, any message that it thought it might have had, it screwed up royally.
There might be an interesting idea with Federation citizens ending up on a planet and causing some kind of revolution because they're no longer tied to the Prime Directive because it's all about survival, but that seems an incredibly minor plot point. I don't understand all these planets that they keep finding, because they seem to be populated by humans. You can say the women in this planet are dominant, they're much taller and stronger than the men, but they've not made any effort to create any kind of alien civilization whatsoever.
Well, to make the females look larger and stronger, they've just made the outfits make it look a bit like they have bigger shoulders. And cast a few men who are a bit shorter and put them in bright clothes which are a bit loose-fitting.
Why is this series obsessed with men's nipples? That's what I want to know.
There was lots of treats for the ladies here, both an open-shirted Riker and a topless Patrick Stewart.
Is that a treat?
Oh yeah.
The episode starts with them saying that the wreckage of the Odin had disappeared 7 years earlier. It took them 7 years to search for the Odin.
And how long was it since they had visited Angel 1 as well? Did they not say it was over 50 years? But it's very important that we keep top diplomatic negotiations with them. We'll make a bit of effort. They just happened to be there because they came across an escape pod. If Starfleet really wants to get stuff done, I think it really needs to work on the basis of doing stuff outside of just passing and happening to come across stuff.
Well, that is 2 episodes in a row now, where the entire plot has been based on, oh, look what we're passing. Shall we stop off there? It's almost as if the really interesting stuff you don't get to see because you always just see what they're on the way to. It's like a road trip film which concentrates entirely on the meal you have in the service station. Thrilling.
In this episode, it's the Romulans. Now, that's probably quite exciting to hear about the Romulans for the first time in Star Trek Next Generation. They've got to go to the neutral zone because basically there's a potential war about to break out. Yet we're stuck on some planet that's a crude metaphor for 80s civilization that doesn't work on any level whatsoever.
Yeah, it's just an inherently bad idea to make the story that surrounds the one that you're actually telling sound more interesting than the one that you're watching. I can't get my head around why anyone would perceive that to be a good idea.
But the B plot in this episode is awful as well, even if it is a tiny bit more interesting. Wesley throws a snowball and that creates a virus that engulfs the entire crew, which Beverly just eventually fixes.
He gets a cold. He gets a fucking cold. What the fuck are they thinking? I don't understand. He's got the fucking flu!
This is a mystery to me. Obviously, you've got a plot on the planet, and every week they want to have something to do on the Enterprise as well. That has resulted in some pretty terrible B-plots in the past. On Justice, where you had the God Alien, which was a completely pointless diversion for the people on the bridge. And in this episode, I mean, this is a big plot. Everybody on the ship gets sick. The origins of it, the holodeck, it's for the second time in 3 weeks has tried to kill everyone. Where does the virus come from? Does anybody know? I just don't really understand. And it affects absolutely everybody. But there's no peril. You don't ever feel that everybody on the Enterprise is going to die. Because handily, the only person who doesn't seem to come up with any symptoms is Beverly Crusher.
A small point. Why would you put the blind man in charge of the ship?
Wait, Geordie's blind?
Geordie LaForge is a lieutenant, junior grade. Is there not somebody slightly higher in command who Picard would say to first to have the bridge and be in charge of the starship? I'm guessing there are a few lieutenant commanders or even full lieutenants on the Enterprise that have some command experience, rather than, to me, what is set up as one of the more junior officers.
How could you get a cold from the holodeck?
That they were skiing?
But it's not real.
It's as real as you want it to be.
What's next week's story? F***ing rabies?
Actually, I think an episode where Worf bites Riker and then Riker gets rabies would be brilliant.
It would be better than this.
Now, Riker, he seems all too keen when he's down on the planet to improve diplomatic relations by going off with a woman he calls mistress and dressing up in a special outfit.
Yes, well, isn't it nice to know that when there's issues in the story of sexual equality and whatnot, that the answer that Riker has to improving relations is to, whatever problem he finds, to stick his in it.
Oh, but he's such a big, strong man. If we had men like you on our planet, we'd be the slaves. And we'd like it. Yeah.
Basically, what he has is chest hair.
He does have a lot of chest hair. And I think that was something we all needed to see.
I never want to see that again, I'll be honest with you. It was just odd.
Yeah, you're going to be disappointed when you get the episode where they shrink down and have to go into his chest hair and fight some Romulans.
There's just a general trend that the writers, well, they don't really know how to write any characters, but in particular, they really don't know how to write women. When Riker comes out in his outfit and you just have Yar and Troy giggling like schoolgirls, is that the reaction you would actually have from Starfleet officers? It just all seems so pathetic.
Commenting on each other's sexiness. Yeah, that was absurd. Also, once again, this series being bizarrely obsessed with sex in the way that a 14-year-old boy would be. That whole scene with Data and the perfume was just such an oddly written piece of nothing that its continued inclusion boggles the mind.
The thing with Data is, Captain Picard can say to him on the bridge, "Tell me everything you know about Angel 1. Oh, I've got all that on file. I know everything about this planet nobody's visited in 60 odd years. But when it comes to something like perfume, well, no idea. Don't have a clue. Wikipedia's let me down on that one."
Also slightly unnerving is the way that he asks, "I don't understand. How could perfume improve sex?" And then all the rest of them give each other knowing little nods and winks, as if the mission that we've missed out that they've just come from is some sort of intergalactic orgy.
Maybe they went back to the planet from justice.
They seem to be trying to do what the original series did. You know, the original series has a reputation of kind of being way ahead of its time, and it did storylines like you had the alien, which was white on one side and black on the other, but the other alien was black on that side and white on the other, and The Next Generation always fails with those type of social commentaries. I mean, it even does it in all the way up to season 7. They try and do an episode which is a social commentary and falls absolutely flat.
Yeah, I mean, the minute that you have Riker trying to shag his way to diplomacy, it's gone wrong. That's, you know, there's no two ways about it. You have lost the argument you are trying to make. Especially because you have her saying about, oh, isn't it wonderful to have a man who's not so weedy and whatnot. But then you're the one enforcing this sort of matriarchy. So this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it just seems like the product of an immature mind who doesn't really know the position they're taking, but is trying desperately to say something extremely right on and just making themselves look like a dinosaur in the process, because it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's gone from being 14-year-old boy to right on 16-year-old.
What is the message of this episode? What am I supposed to take away?
I have literally no idea. And the resolution to it is no better. This whole thing, you know, they're working and they're trying to get it so that Ramsey can, with his mad 80s mullet, can stay on the planet because he can't leave. And then all it ends up with is, oh, well, we won't kill him. But he'll live in exile and it'll be an incredibly hard life and generations will resent us for years to come. It's fine, isn't it? Concessions. Yeah. Well, no, actually, this is awful.
What I don't understand is, they say that Ramsey is not bound by the Prime Directive because he's part of just a freighter. He wasn't in Starfleet. But surely any citizen of the Federation must be bound by the laws of it, which must include the Prime Directive. Otherwise, surely it would be free enterprise to go to random uncivilized planets and just take all their resources away, completely change planets, sell weapons for war. Surely any citizen of the Federation must be bound by the Prime Directive, and it's not just members of Starfleet.
You would have thought so. Logically, that would make sense. But this hour of television is entirely devoid of logic.
Another big problem is the complete lack of world building. All we really see is the mistress's chamber and her inner circle. You don't get any sense of any turmoil, any kind of revolution, what the men are doing on the planet. It's very strange that it's her second in command is married to Ramsay. Would it not make more sense for maybe some of the men who work for her to be in league with the revolution and be part of that? Just so tedious and irritating, and I'm annoyed I'm even having to analyse it.
So why would the Prime Directive apply to this episode? Because they're a warp-capable culture, presumably, because...
No, they're not.
But the Federation have been in contact with them before.
It says at the start they're the equivalent of mid-20th century Earth. That's one of Data's lines, and Geordi says, it's just like being marooned at home, which makes no sense because they're not marooned and it's nothing like home because that was 350 years ago. But, you know, it's nice to give Geordi something to say to make him sound cool. So, I don't know why they're in touch. It seems it's not a problem to get in touch with pre-warp capable civilizations, as we saw before in the other great social commentary, Code of Honor.
They still haven't established what the Prime Directive is yet, then.
No, they haven't. Which is odd, because it was pretty well established in the original series. Somebody should maybe go and watch that and work out how to make television.
Well, no, because if they went back and watched the original series, this episode could have been even worse. Because you could have had the last original series episode in which Kirk is body swaps with a woman because a woman can never be a captain of a starship.
But to me, this almost feels more dated than a lot of the original series episodes. I think it must have felt dated in 1988 as well. It just feels like television moved on and they're still trying to do the same stuff that they were doing in the 60s, but they're not doing it half as well.
Yeah, I mean, all too often watching this series, I've just seen so many parallels with the original series. And not good ones. When an episode is bad, it can be really bad. And when an episode is good, it can be very good. But it does mean that the really bad ones just draw on the worst elements of the original series that don't fit in the time that the programme is being made anymore.
It feels bad to say this, but I think that the person to blame might have been Gene Roddenberry.
No, I think that very probably is the case.
But yeah, it does seem that the mindset of the writers in the writers' room... Don't forget, they did bring in a lot of writers from the original series, none of whom made it to the second series. So at this stage, they're making a show that I don't think anybody really wants to see. It's too much in the middle. It's trying to be like the 60s, but it's tried to differentiate it. It's making 60s style television, but nobody working on it is young enough or innovative enough to actually make it work in the same way that they did. And it just results in awful, awful television. I mean, I wanted to switch this episode off. If I wasn't watching it for a podcast, there is no way I would sit through this. It is dreadful.
Yeah, I would have gone within 15 minutes, I think. Which seems really harsh, and to be honest with you, that's not generally how I watch television. But I found it a real struggle to keep my attention on this episode.
It feels sort of like 2 steps forwards and 5 steps back every time. Sometimes you see glimpses in episodes of stuff that's, you know, quite good, and you see promise and you see potential, and then they do this again, and it just makes you think, is this a sustainable TV show? Is there any way that it will ever be revered in the same way as the original series? How can it keep running? How can people keep watching if they keep making episodes as bad as this? Say what you like about Code of Honor, and we did. It's horrible, and it's terrible, and it's racist, but in some ways this is worse, because it's just so boring.
I think that sums it up, really, to be honest with you.
I mean, there is a lot of criticism against Season 1 of Next Generation, and you can understand watching these episodes as we are, one at a time every few weeks, and you just do wonder how the show got a Season 2, how people kept on watching. Because there are good episodes here and there, but they are few and far between compared to Season 2 onwards.
What small nuggets of gold did we gain from this episode? Let's find out now, in our quickfire round.
Quickfire.
The ship that crashes is called the Odin. In Norse mythology, Odin is the All-Father of the gods, ruler of Asgard, and played by Anthony Hopkins.
In our continuing series of hilarious TNG lines, I think I may sneeze. A Klingon sneeze? Only kind I know. Ha ha! Aha! Aha! Ha! Aha! Another one. Engineering reports computer I'm sorry, I'm getting sick. Well, I'm sure half the ship knows that by now. Ha! Oh, you're killing me. I have a problem with one of Ramsey's lines. The line, you can't rescue a man from what he calls his home. So how does the fire brigade work exactly?
There's the crystal ball of death.
As a show of strength, they kill a vase. Why did they kill a vase? What did the vase do to them?
It's a male vase.
In other crystals, the gift that the Federation give to Angel 1 is an Albani meditation crystal, which is a light in a glass which you turn on if you want to have sex.
Presumably it has a red light.
I'm quite willing to put to one side the fact that Data can fly an entire starship on his own. I can only assume all the people at the other stations are just playing Space Invaders most of the time. But he is the one person unaffected by this virus. But wasn't he affected by the Psi 2000 virus before, thus making him vulnerable to viruses?
Yeah, actually that's a really good point. This is ridiculous! As you can see, we're not without compassion. Your deaths will be swift and painless. Cheers for that! I was concerned about the swift and painful kind of thing, but no, if it's just going to be swift and painless, then yeah, bring on the death. Yeah, I don't see any problem with the deathy thing.
Now, you know how we like the planet that they visit every week, the planet Hellset?
Yes.
Well, the map painting that they use in this episode for Angel 1, maybe remember that. That might come up every so often, and you think, well, why do they use the exact same establishing shot of every civilised planet that they visit? Seems a little bit odd.
Alright, yeah. Because you see, when I saw the painting, I thought, that looks like a Klingon planet. And yeah, it was used for a Klingon planet in another episode.
I hope you enjoyed this episode more than we did. Next time, we will be looking at 11001001. You can find us on Twitter at The Spoilist or on Facebook. Just search for The Spoilist. Our website is thespoilist.com. Click the podcast button for all the episodes of First Contact. And indeed, we are all over iTunes. You know how to use that, I assume. This isn't an instruction manual on how to find podcasts. What do you want from me? Leave me alone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. For a joke, I was looking up some next-gen erotic fiction